welcome to Tennessee Real Estate Insider. I'm your host, Allyson Spencer, top producing agent at Greater Impact Realty and property manager. Today joining me is Kathy Oakes. Kathy, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Kathy is the owner of Greater Impact Realty and has been in the industry for how many years?
Well, I say 20 plus because then it doesn't age me. The plus just can keep going on.
Wow, I mean, that is incredible. So you have so much to offer us as far as real estate knowledge and experience, and I'm so excited that you're joining today because our topic is on the 2024 market and what the 2025 market is looking like. So interested to hear what your expert knowledge is on that. So stay tuned if you're interested to learn more about the market. As far as the 2024 recap goes, what are your thoughts?
Wow, what a year, right? We saw huge variations in our real estate market across the country. And I think the biggest thing that the National Association of Realtors recognized and acknowledged by the end of the year was we really had two separate years folded into one. Because of the presidency, because of the election, because of so many economic factors that were going on, as well as foreign situations that were happening in 2024, we saw a first 2 quarters year and a second 2 quarters year. And those showed up very differently in different demographics of the country. Now, in our area, we saw continued growth, and that's wonderful. Tennessee remains one of the top most movable 2 states. Nationally, I think the biggest trend we saw that shocked, I think, all of the industry, people who follow the industry, is that the first-time home buyer is the oldest it has ever been in the history of recordings in this country.
Wow.
In 2024, the average home buyer was 36 years old. And at 36 years old, they're so far behind.
Wow.
That number typically is in the mid-20s. It has not been over 30 in 30 plus years. So to go to the first-time home buyer jumping to the age of 36, huge economic contributors brought that about.
Wow, that is groundbreaking because, you know, there were so many factors involved.
Yes.
We had interest rates, home prices, all of the different variables going on in our nation,
Right.
and the economy. How did you see that the interest rates affected purchasers' abilities?
In a very large way. Again, hitting out that first-time home market. The people that I think were most affected overall by those interest rates were first-time home buyers and also people who were trying to buy even second properties, because people who were buying second properties 2 years ago, they had those interest rates were lower. So even on a additional home property investment loans, those were lower. So now going from 5% to 10% down, or even 15 to 20% down to buy down your rate, affected our second home market as well.
Wow, that is true. I mean, rates in November, I think, reached a peak.
Yeah.
In our region, they were somewhere between 8 and 9%.
Right.
And thankfully, we're going to touch on the 2025 market. We are seeing those come down, but I think that definitely impacted the 2024 market, as well as an election year. That always is a disruptor in the real estate market. We saw a lot of homes sit on the market throughout the fourth quarter because of the election changeover. Inventory, how did you see the 2024 inventory?
Wow, it was low. Again, I think sellers realized that the seller's market was over. The post-COVID seller's market, where we had multiple offers and everybody fighting over a home, interest rates were at an all-time low, that market's over. So sellers began to adjust their expectations, and they didn't really like it. And so what we saw was, as interest rates went up, someone who could buy an average home of $400,000 with low interest rates could buy only a $300,000 home with the same interest rates. So we saw the price of a home, the average price, begin to stall. So we saw things that were listed stay on the market longer, and we saw prices, the variance of prices, sellers' expectations had to adjust. They listed at one price, but the gap of what they actually agreed to sell for was less than.
Wow. And I do think we had a surplus of inventory,
Oh,
which
absolutely.
has now affected our 2025 market. But
Right.
in the fourth quarter, we were up 35%
Right.
in our region for inventory because things were sitting.
Right.
We also saw an increase in days on market. We have seen from 2023 in that time in the fourth quarter, it was about an average of maybe 50 days.
Or 15 minutes.
And then it went up to 60 in the fourth quarter, but it has gone up even more in 2025
Right.
to over 80 days on market in our region, which is still better than a lot of the regions surrounding us.
Right.
What is your take on the days on market?
Well, again, an outside consumer mistakes days on the market, meaning, oh, it's active on the market and people are traipsing through your home for 50 to 60 days. What that actually means is this is how long from start to finish it took for that home to sell. So from the time it got listed to the time it closed, that's 50 or 60 days. That's nothing. That means within the first 20 days, that home went under contract, and then the loan took another 3 to 4 weeks, depending on the type of loan, to close. So that's actually amazing. That's very good. That's a strong market.
And I know you and I both went to Nashville recently to meet up with agents all throughout Tennessee, and our days on market were by far half
Exactly.
of what some of the other
Right.
inventory is looking like throughout Tennessee.
Right.
So as far as trends in 2025 go, what are some economic factors that are impacting our real estate in our region?
Well, economically, I think our biggest impact will be first and foremost, new constructions. We will probably see, because of tariffs, new home prices will rise. I don't see a way around that. I don't mean to be, a negative doomsdayer, but without being able to freely trade with Canada, specifically for our steel and much of our lumber, that is going to cause any of those new construction prices to go up. So if someone has a home under contract that's a new construction, good for you. Secure that contract, get that home. I would say the first half of the year for builders, you'll see a huge scramble of those builders because they've already purchased their materials, getting those homes built. I would say the third and fourth quarter of the year, I'm curious. I'm curious to see how, I don't have my crystal ball, and so I'm curious to see how are the tariffs, specifically with Canada, going to impact that housing market for the next second half of the year.
I know we're already starting to see the tariffs and some of those things take effect in small ways, but we haven't seen it on a large scale yet.
Right.
And seeing how that's going to affect our inventory is super important. I know that in 2025, in the first quarter, we had the most permits pulled for builders in our area since COVID.
Exactly.
So we have a lot of builders who are beginning to build. They began to build before a lot of those tariffs have taken
Right.
effect. So seeing how that's going to affect our market, where the price per square foot for new construction is already more than we've ever seen, I'm a little nervous about it. What about you?
I'm a little nervous. I tell you, this may edge out a one-time builder, a builder who builds, say, one home at a time. And whereas we may see, on the other hand, our builders who build neighborhoods at a time, they have warehouses. And in those warehouses, they order their drywall for an entire project they're doing. They go ahead and order their steel, their wood, their whatever. So I think we'll see those builders win this year, and we'll see that maybe the small one at a time builder, we may see his or her prices go up.
Now, changing a little bit to the current 2025 market, how are you seeing price per square foot on current inventory in our area for resale?
Wow, I love that question. I personally am a forward thinker. So I'm never the guy looking in the rearview mirror. I'm always looking through the windshield and saying what's coming. And what I see coming is, yes, I think we're going to see a higher increase on resale homes, and I'm excited about that. We are, depending on finishes, because you're looking at a new home finishes from 300 to 400 a square foot. That only a few people can purchase in that market.
Right.
Whereas a resale home, depending on the area in the Tri-Cities specifically, you could range from 180 a square foot to 275 a square foot pretty easily.
Absolutely. And as far as the inventory goes, we are seeing more inventory. Some of that is
Yes.
carryover from the fourth quarter, but we are up about 26% from this time last year, which is definitely kind of leveling out the market.
Right.
We are starting to see that shift. Like you said, this is not a post-COVID market. This is a post-COVID market. And we are beginning to see that there are the sellers are able to, take a little bit more negotiations to sell their home. Buyers are able to negotiate a little more because there is more inventory. So as far as sellers' purchase price, thankfully in our area, it's still up over 8% from what it was this time last year.
Right.
And I believe that the prices are going to remain steady because the demand is there. We see a lot of buyers
A lot of buyers.
who are looking to purchase, but we do see that the close rate is down some. And I believe that that is just because there is more inventory. What are your thoughts on the current inventory and seller buyer combo?
So we have two measurements. We look at lead and we look at lag. So lag was our first quarter. Our first quarter was exactly what you said. We saw things slower than we would have liked to have in the state of Tennessee specifically. On the other hand, we look at lead. What happened in April? Off the charts. We're actually 54% over above what we were last year in April of contracts written, meaning May and June are going to be great months in the real estate industry. It also means that sellers are going to be happy, buyers are happy, rates are down a little. So, and also we always know just the life trend, people like to move at the end of a school year.
Right.
People like to move, and adjust their families. So we know spring is looking amazing. And like I said, just looking at the contracts written, the increase number there, when you count the pendings in the home market, we're seeing shorter days on market in April. So, and now as we move into May, I think it's only going to get better.
Absolutely. And I think we sell around the fourth of the inventory within the second quarter every year.
Absolutely.
So I'm so excited. My buyers are so excited. My sellers are so excited. We are seeing, I know depending on the price point, multiple offers because there is the competition right now and the demand for purchasing homes. There's also the rental market.
We haven't even talked about that.
This is a huge part of the market, and for us as a property manager of rentals in this region, I would say May going into the second quarter is the most popular time because people are transitioning in and transitioning out.
Right.
Summer is a huge transition month. As far as the prices go, we are down about 3 to 5% in what our long-term rentals are costing right now. However, we are seeing applications on a level that we've never seen before. There is a little bit of an effect of the economy and how it's affecting who qualifies for these homes. We've seen a number of bankruptcies and poor credit scores, and so that is affecting eligibility for the renters. But we are definitely seeing high demand. A lot of people still moving in from out of state who are looking to rent. We're also bringing in professionals like doctors and teachers and people who are coming to our region for work. So that's been exciting. Still also seeing retirees who are looking to come to the area. So it's always fun to get to meet new people and share the love of the region with people who come to the area. East Tennessee is one of the best places to live, and I am just so grateful to get to be a real estate agent here.
Me too.
So the rental market is still strong. What are some tips and advice that you would give to buyers and sellers in 2025?
Biggest tip I would say to any buyer and seller is get realistic expectations. Unrealistic expectations lead to unrealistic demands later on in your buying journey. So a realistic expectation for a seller is, I would love to sell at this. This would be my Barbie dream price. However, in order to get closer to my grandchildren, work, whatever, I will settle for this. We're going to have a hard conversation at some point. That's a realistic conversation. For a buyer, it's going to be, hey, realistically, you must be pre-approved before we can start shopping. The reason is I don't want to sell you short. I want you to be able to buy the most house for the realistic dollars that can fit your budget, whether eggs are $9 a dozen or $6 a dozen, or $3 a dozen. So I think the biggest tip I can give is to hire a professional like you that can have a realistic conversation whether you're buying or selling.
Absolutely. And one tip that I would give is for sellers, I've noticed with some of my listings lately, buyers are coming to the table with less money
Oh,
on
yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
So they're more interested, they're willing to pay more for the home if the repairs are done. And so depending on the price point, it is worth paying a few $1,000s to make those repairs because your return on that investment is going to be 10 to 20,000.
Absolutely.
And I was interested to see that. I've been watching several properties in different neighborhoods who some repaired, some didn't, and the ones who had repaired went right away. So coming up with a seller's home inspection,
Right.
being able to present that to the buyers will definitely help keep things going smoothly or taking care of some of the big things that could cause the property to be less marketable.
You know, you bring up a great point that buyers are bringing less money to the table. Well, what we really see is why? Because many of them have the funds, but they don't want to spend them because of the economy, because of the predictions, because of the uncertainty. So they want to hold on to that nest egg, if you will.
Right.
So one of the trends I think we're going to see more and more, and that top agents will continue to lead their buyers towards, is our pattern has been to always ask for a seller to pay closing costs, right, for a buyer. But for the same dollars, a buyer can pay $5,000 for their closing costs, but they could ask a seller to pay $5,000 to buy their rate down, which in effect saves them thousands and thousands of dollars over the life of their loan, even if they only keep the home 3 to 5 years. Now, we did this when the market was down years ago and interest rates were up. We haven't had to do it in the last 10, 15 years. And so our newer crop of agents aren't as versed in that. A professional agent, such as yourself, is going to be able to guide your buyer and say, hey, buyer, you're going to be savvier to ask for buy down of that interest rate.
I love that. That's such a good tip. And I think could definitely go a long way in 2025. Investors, let's talk about investors for a minute. We're seeing a little bit of a big shift, it's a little bit of a big shift for short-term rentals.
Yeah.
What are we seeing across Tennessee for short-term rental investments?
So I love investments and I love short-term rentals. We've all seen it. Anybody who follows the market and invests in the market, we've enjoyed it, being able to. I love Airbnbs or and that type of thing. However, we're seeing more and more neighborhood communities, HOAs get involved, go to their local aldermans and council members and say, cut it out. We don't want any STRs, no short-term rentals in our neighborhood, no STRs in our developments. So we're seeing more and more developments add to their covenants and restrictions, no short-term rentals, 6-month lease only, 12-month lease only. So it's not that we're seeing the short-term rental market decrease. The opposite is true. The demand is certainly there. It just is a little bit more, you're going to have a strong agent to help you find the properties that are available that can be sold and used as a short-term rental.
Absolutely. I think too, probably the economy and uncertainty of certain things has caused some people to travel a little bit less.
Yeah.
But Airbnb and VRBO and all of the short-term rentals is still hugely popular.
Huge.
It is interesting to see how the different municipalities, though, are taking
Right.
different directions with that.
On that note, we also see that any area like Tri-Cities, for instance, that is a heavy, what I call cerebral city. We have a hospital, we have a teaching hospital, we have a teaching medical school, we have a teaching pharmacy school. So all of those are going to have tighter budgets in their hospitals and in their administrations, which means that when they hire nurses, when they hire pharmacists specifically, they're going out and they're getting contract laborers, traveling nurses, traveling pharmacists. So in all of these cities, the short-term rentals are in a huge demand because these nurses are coming in and saying, I need a 3-month contract. I need a 3-month place to stay. Same with the pharmacist especially. So we see those type people versus just a weekend vacationer
Absolutely.
being the more popular trend in the short-term rental.
Wonderful. Okay, so what are some of the 2025 trends?
Great question. I think one of the biggest trends that we see, and again, National Association of Realtors really tracked this last year. This was like a bounce back from a COVID that we discovered isolation was no fun. And then we saw so many people, especially in urban or downtown areas, moving in together. People moved back in with their families and people created new families. They said, oh, you're across the hall from me. You're suddenly my sibling or something. So what I believe we're going to see in 2025 is more multi-generational homes more than ever being sold, meaning someone who is going into retirement can buy a patio home for X number of thousands of dollars and they can use their retirement. But they could take that same money and go in with their child who can only buy a half that price home. So what we're really going to see, I think, is more homes sell with multi-living spaces, added kitchens in the basement, in-law suites, additional garages that have been turned into apartments, guest houses, any of those things, because so many families have seen, hey, wait, we do all help each other living here together, and life becomes easier when you're downstairs, we're upstairs, somebody can run to the grocery store, somebody can get little Susie to dance practice, and yet we can combine our monies. We saw more homes go under contract, and I think we're going to continue to see this. I was talking with an attorney recently who was saying he saw more homes being sold to people who were not spouses than he's ever seen before in his career. And so that's unique.
I think it is. And I mean, I even have buyers this week coming in and they're looking for a multi-generational home. So
I know with my own parents, they're aging and I've looked into it myself and thought, should I get a different home and get a guest house or so it's part of life.
I think that's a great trend. I hope it stays. And I hope our housing market opens up opportunities for that.
I feel it will.
So to recap, 2025 is a year of opportunity. There is a lot more inventory for buyers to choose from and high hopes for sellers because they're competing with high new construction costs.
Right.
But it's still a very strong market here in East Tennessee.
Yes.
And thank you so much for your insight and for joining me on today's podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
And thank you all for tuning in. Please subscribe and stay tuned for another episode.